let's dive right in. We're going to start with sort of the, some people might call it the boring vets. I'm going to call them the reliable vets, the guys, the safety nets, as our producer referred to them, the guys that year in and year out, you can rely on. D-Bro, who are you looking at here?
I mean, the three-pack of stable guys I got to talk about here is Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, and DK Metcalf, man. Derrick Henry has just been the ultimate consistent running back. Every year we talk about he's going to fall off, he's going to fall off, he's going to fall off. I'm not betting on it this year. I think Derrick Henry, the train keeps rolling, man. And the reason I'm willing to make that bet yet again with Baltimore and the change of scenery is we haven't seen any fall off of Derrick Henry's tackle breaking metrics, even last year. And people could talk about, oh, well, he wasn't the Derrick Henry of old. I will adamantly push back against that. He was 9th in explosive run rate and 11th in yards after contact per attempt. I don't care who you are. Those numbers play up. So you're telling me he goes to Baltimore and all of those running backs, everybody on that roster combined for 20 rushing touchdowns this year? Dude, I had to head over to Betting Pros yesterday, and I bet the over at plus money on the 10.5 rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to crush this year. The next guy, like I talked about, Joe Mixon, man. And this almost makes me feel weird. Like, I've never been this into Joe Mixon entering a fantasy season as I think I'm going to be this year. And I know people look at, oh, he's going from Cincinnati to Houston. They gave him the bag. They gave him a contract. And what we saw Devin Singletary do last year, weeks 9 through 18, he averaged 19 touches, almost 90 total yards per game. Do we not think that Joe Mixon is going to even eclipse those numbers? As well as being a guy over the last 3 years, RB11, RB7, RB5. He's going to be an RB1 in my ranks this year. I think he has top 5 upside to crush in this offense. And DK Metcalf, if you're going to make the bet of the stable guy, is DK Metcalf probably going to end up the year as a top 5, top 8 wide receiver? No. But am I getting and paying for steady wide receiver 2 production? Yes. Am I going to probably get that? Absolutely yes. He's been wide receiver 22, wide receiver 24, and wide receiver 20 over the last 3 seasons. And the big thing that I want to talk about with DK Metcalf is not even a DK Metcalf-centric piece. The Seattle offensive line is much improved this offseason. Now, yes, they're betting on a few bounce backs from certain guys, but addressing the guard positions, the turnover at center. And if you look at the splits last year for Geno Smith, under pressure, 24th in yards per attempt, 22nd in big-time throw rate. When he was in clean pockets, Geno was still Chef Geno. He was 5th best in yards per attempt and had the highest big-time throw rate in the NFL. So if we get a better Seattle offensive line this year, DK Metcalf is going to be a locked-in wide receiver 2 yet again, but maybe we see a little bit more upside.
Those who are watching us on YouTube might notice that I had looked pretty confused during that Derrick Henry. Did you say that the over was plus money on the rushing touchdowns for him?
Over 10.5 is plus 120 to plus 130. I tweeted it out yesterday. I was like, I can't bet this fast enough, man.
To me, that is strictly a bet on is he healthy.
Yes,
if he plays the entire season, I will bet literally any amount of money that he goes over 10 and a half touchdowns. I mean, the Raven, I've said this before, like back when they first signed him, like they don't want to run with Lamar close. They would prefer to run with their running backs and let them do the scoring of touchdowns. And the guys who did that last year, A, weren't as good as Derrick Henry is, and B, aren't there anymore. And it's still like going to be a really, really good offense that's going to score a lot of touchdowns. I'm really surprised that number is plus money. Like I said,
Crazy.
If you're telling me he plays the entire season, I would think he's much closer to 15 or more rushing touchdowns than 10. Like I'm going to be having a lot of Derrick Henry on my rosters this year. I can guarantee it. Erickson, I know Joe Mixon is a name that you were considering picking for this segment as well. That's somebody you agree on.
I do. Yeah, I think that he fits in with what they want to do in Houston offensively under Bobby Slowick. You look at the offensive line for the Houston Texans last year, super injured, and CJ Stroud was still good. So now that offensive line is going to benefit from better injury luck. Joe Mixon, look, they didn't have to give him a contract extension after they traded, like a 7th-round pick for him. So at first I was like, they gave up nothing to get him. He's probably going to get cut anyway. But then they immediately re-signed him. Dameon Pierce just doesn't really fit into what this offense wants to do. So maybe he gets traded. But who else is there to take away opportunities from Joe Mixon as that bell cow running back in this offense? So we saw with the 49ers that they can take an offense or a player with a 3-down skill set at running back and put him into a 3-down role, what they did with Christian McCaffrey. The Houston Texans are the 49ers of the South with Slowick coming over from that system. So yeah, Joe Mixon is a 3-down workload workhorse in an up ascending offense. I love it.
I love that you just brought up the offensive line, Erickson, because I failed to mention, man, like when Devin Singletary was the starter in this offense, we're talking about a Houston offensive line because that's also the upgrade here. Mixon's going to be running by an offensive line that after week 9 last year was 12th in adjusted yards before contact per attempt. So it's wheels up, baby.
Where, for both these veteran running backs specifically, D-Bro, like what range are you going to have them ranked in, do you think? Are we talking like back end RB2s in terms of where you draft them? A little higher, a little lower? Like what kind of range are you thinking?
For Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry?
Yeah, for the two running backs.
Dude, I've got both of them top 10 right now. Like, I've got Joe Mixon at
top
RB9.
10? Okay, so I'm way low.
Yeah, RB9, and I've got Derrick Henry at RB7. And people might, snub their nose at that. I just talked, like, Baltimore's going to score a crap ton of touchdowns, and it's going to run through Derrick Henry. So you're telling me, what did Gus have last year? No, Ryan, you probably know this off the 13 rushing touchdowns, I think? Like, Derrick Henry's going to crush, dude.
Yeah, it was like 12 or 12-ish in that range. I don't know that I would go like that aggressively in terms of like a ranking, but what I like especially about Derrick Henry is I think that you can get him later than like I will be ranking him. I think I'll be able to wait a round or two where I would, naturally take him and still get him and consider that a really good value. So just quickly, Erickson, where do you have those guys ranked roughly?
So I'm higher on Mixon. So I have him as RB10, or excuse me, RB9. I'm a little bit lower on Derrick Henry. I have him RB17, and I admit that could totally destroy me. And it comes down to touchdowns. But because at the end of the day, though, I know Derrick Henry, if there's a game where the Ravens fall behind, like Derrick Henry's not doing anything in that game. So like that's one concern I have from him, is that the receiving usage is not there. It's not going to be there. It's never been there with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. So I think that makes him more volatile. But in those games where the Ravens are running up the scoreboard and they're feeding Derrick Henry, yeah, he's going to have monster games.
I think I'll probably have him somewhere in between you guys, maybe that RB12-ish range, back end. RB1, Erickson, give me your reliable vets.
Yeah, so this is the canned food group, as I like to call them, because you don't know if the food in the fridge is good, but all that canned food you have, you got years to eat that stuff, so you'll be fine. So when John sent us the show sheet, the first guy would have popped up as reliable, always exceed expectations, forever, never a bride, always a bridesmaid, Devin Singletary. Look, he's a starting running back that nobody wants, but he always exceeds expectations. Look, he's never finished through 5 seasons worse than RB35 in PPR. You know what his ECR ADP is? RB35. And he's a starting running back. He's slated to be the Giants starting running back this year. Now, is that the best role you could ask for? No, not necessarily. The Giants have a lot of problems on offense, but Devin Singletary has shown at all levels that he can be a capable running back. Use him on all 3 downs. He's, again, master of none, but he can do everything. Jack of all trades. And when you're looking at the depth chart with the Giants, I do like Tyron Tracy, the guy they drafted in the 5th round, as like a sleeper, but he's very inexperienced. He's played 1 year at running back last season. So I can't imagine he's going to take over the starting role in week 1, put him out in pass pro to protect Daniel Jones, where Singletary can do all those things. So if you're going with a 0 RB approach and you need someone that you can get later on because of how cheap Devin Singletary is going outside the top 30 running backs, like I just don't see how he's not going to at least give you something on your return on investment where you're going to be able to draft him, especially in the beginning of the season. So if you're taking more shots on some of these upside receivers that you're not sure how the depth chart's going to take out, you can take Devin Singletary as your RB2, and you can start him week 1 pretty confidently. He's going to get the majority of touches in the Giants' backfield. Again, last season under Brian Daboll in Buffalo, Singletary was the RB20 on 228 touches. You can get over 200 touches for a running back going outside the top 30. So Devin Singletary, I think that he's a very reliable guy that you can draft very, very late. Michael Pittman Jr., I just think he's an alpha in the Colts offense. Anthony Richardson's coming back. And the thing with Michael Pittman last year, look, 30% target share. That was the 4th highest among all wide receivers. They added A.D. Mitchell, but A.D. Mitchell's not a targeter. He's a guy that's going to stretch the field and improve the overall offensive efficiency, not necessarily take away targets from Michael Pittman. So if anything, it's going to create more opportunities for scoring for this offense in general. And that's what held Michael Pittman Jr. back last season. Only had 4 touchdowns. So he needs better touchdown variance. So if that works in his favor, if Anthony Richardson does take a leap forward and really delivers as the QB5 potentially, like his ADP and ECR ranking is, I think Michael Pittman can kind of graduate, I guess, in kind of a similar way to DK Metcalf into that higher ceiling at wide receiver. But at worst, he's going to be in that wide receiver 2 range. And then last but not least, it's Amari Cooper, the guy that nobody seems to want to draft. And last time we saw him, he was like putting up 300 yards in the playoffs with Joe Flacco as his quarterback. Look, he played with 4 different quarterbacks last year and still finished 10th in receiving yards. He was second in receptions of 20 yards or more, behind only Tyreek Hill, 10th highest air yard share. Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku's a tight end. Like, are you afraid that these guys are really going to supplant Amari Cooper as the alpha in this offense? And what if we get Deshaun Watson, a better Deshaun Watson? Not necessarily even a Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, but a better version of Watson. Look, the 5 games that Watson played last year with with Amari Cooper, 23% target share, 42% air yard share. He's averaging just under 100 receiving yards per game, 15 fantasy points per game. That was 6th best at the position. So Amari Cooper, again, another guy that a lot of people I don't think really want to draft, but I'm like, I'll take Amari Cooper. Like, he's been really productive everywhere he's gone. So I like Amari Cooper a lot.
Debra, I want to ask you about Cooper because you and Erickson are actually pretty close in your rankings on Michael Pittman, but Cooper is where you really differentiate. Erickson currently has him wide receiver 14, and you have him wide receiver 30. That's in half PPR on the site. So you're much lower on him, Debra.
Yeah, I've just got him in a long tier. Like, after a wide receiver 17, I've got a long tier of guys that they could finish anywhere from a mid wide receiver 2 to a high end 3. And there's just other guys in that tier. Like, I'd rather make the bet on a few other wide receivers in certain offenses than Amari Cooper. And this is not, I won't disparage anything Erickson said about the volume expectations and stuff. This just kind of comes back to, and maybe a little bit of foreshadowing, Erickson's going to have to win me over with Deshaun Watson, because what we've seen out of Deshaun Watson outside of Houston has not been fantastic. Now, his standalone value could be a little bit better than I think maybe Cooper's, but Cooper last year, yes, the volume is going to be there. I just question, is the ceiling and stuff going to be there? And the other part of this is the step we saw David Njoku take over the back half of the season. I'll be very curious if he continues that into this year. And if he does, maybe he does eat into Cooper's production just a little bit, but that's not how I'm forecasting it just as of yet.
We'll have a little more conversation on Deshaun Watson coming up in just a second. But first, the NFL draft is over and the teams are set. It's time to start looking ahead to the NFL season with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Get a jump start on the season with futures bets on division winners, win totals, stat leaders, and so much more. Explore the latest odds on which rookies will have the most passing or receiving yards, or check out futures for your favorite teams and players on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You know, the first thing I'm looking at is my guy, Lamar Jackson, for MVP yet again. And actually, jokes about being a Ravens homer aside, I do find myself kind of confused why he only has the 5th best odds to win MVP, coming off of his 2nd time winning that award the season he just had. Almost a unanimous winner last year, just 1 vote keeping him from doing so. He's behind Mahomes at plus 600, which makes sense. Then it's Josh Allen plus 800, Burrow plus 900, Stroud plus 900, then finally Lamar at plus 1,000. Considering Lamar has 2 MVPs already, those other 3 ahead of him have combined for 0. You know which way I'm going on that one. However you plan to bet your NFL futures, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FANTASYPROS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code FANTASYPROS, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
My Lamar Jackson MVP ticket from last year paid for my wedding suit. So shout out to Lamar.
You'll love to see it. You'll love to see it.
The second he resigned, signed the extension in Baltimore, I went and bet all of his stuff, and that paid off well. Again, I mean, like Debra, we don't need to belabor the point, but am I crazy for thinking it's weird that he has the 5th best odds, given that he's won the award twice?
It is kind of crazy. He should be top 3 at worst. You want to put Mahomes and Allen up there, that's fine, but Lamar should be the 3rd guy on the board.
Mahomes, fine. I will never argue, against him having the best odds. But even Allen, Allen's never won the award.
No, I don't disagree at all. I don't disagree.
And Lamar might have better weapons this year. So, anyways, I just found that really surprising.